So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of eNISHIP, the national initiative to strengthen collaboration between HIV/TB through e-learning. And I would like to first and foremost welcome our director, Dr. R.K. Diwan, who is with me here and who is today wearing two hats. One of the hat is that he is the esteemed director of our institute and under whose guidance and blessing this whole activity takes place. The other hat that he's wearing is of an eminent thoracic surgeon. So we thought it was high time that our initiate community came to know about the importance of surgery in TB because not many people even today know the importance of surgery. And if physicians or medical officers will not know the importance of surgery, there is no way that they can refer for surgery on time. So welcome, sir, to this platform. Then beyond, sir, there is Dr. Ananya. Yeah, Dr. Ananya is a senior chest specialist, a TB and chest specialist in the National Institute of TB and Respiratory Diseases. Then I have Dr. Anuradha, who is the technical expert from Share India. And there is there is Mr. Rakesh, whom you cannot see, but who's there, plays a very important role behind the scenes. He is the IT expert, and I can see that Mr. Gaurav Rewari has joined from Echo India online. Welcome, Gaurav. Their logistic support is very, very important to us. Now, with this, I would like to invite all our participants, ART centers from Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, UP, West Bengal, Assam, and other northeastern states. And I also see that NTI Bangalore, one of the National Institutes of TB, have also logged in. So welcome our colleagues from NTI Bangalore and the other parts of India. So while I'm talking, I would just request Rakesh, can you please put up the attendance poll? So let's go ahead for the attendance poll. 2 minutes for the attendance poll, please. And while you're doing the attendance poll, I would actually just I have introduced ourselves, and now I'll just tell you what is the case today. Today's case is very interesting. It has come from West Bengal, and it is the case of a very, very atypical presentation of extrapulmonary TB. We have discussed lots of extrapulmonary presentations, but even in these 3 years, this is the first time we are discussing such a case of this particular site of the chest wall. So it's a case presentation, then there is a didactic by our thoracic surgeon, Dr. Pallavi, and then expert comments will be given by our director, sir, who's an eminent thoracic surgeon, Dr. R.K. Diwan. So with this, can I request Dr. Prapa Dey? She is the medical officer of ART Center from SSKM and IPGMER Hospital, Kolkata, to kindly give her case presentation, to present the case, please.
Okay, I just wish to address the session, and I would like to thank eNISHCHIT and all the respected doctors and all my colleagues for giving me this opportunity to present this case. I think we are already a little bit delayed, so I just directly go to the case. We are working at SSKM ART Center, which is functional since 2012. This particular case drew my attention because it came to us with a very different presentation. So 35-year-old male patient, he got his pre-RT registration done and he came to us in 2016. He got registered in October 2016. He came with the complaints of recurrent diarrhea and oral candidiasis, and he was treated accordingly. After thorough investigations, we found out that he's fit for ART and no other OI as such is there. So we started on ART, but he gave a history of cervical lymph node tuberculosis 9 months back, for which he had taken ATT from private, but he could not show us any documents. So after that, he went on with ART, and immediately after starting ART, he presented with inflamed lymph nodes. So then we did the whatever investigations we're supposed to do, and the FNAC in November 2016, it showed TB lymphadenitis with AFB positivity. So he was planned for CAT1. We counseled him, advised him, but he got sick and he went and got admitted to some private nursing home. There they started AKT4 for him. So when he came back to us, he was already on AKT4. Then we advised him, but he wanted to continue the private treatment. So after that, he took AK2T4 till November 2017. And the DNA PCR for MTB was done from outside, that came as negative. After this 1 year, he suddenly presented with a mass on the right side of the anterior chest wall. It was quite visible. So initially we were thinking whether it can be any side effects or anything, or lipoma. We were doing any differential diagnosis, but he was not giving any symptoms of fever or weight loss or anything of that sort. Then we just had a doubt because he already had two episodes of tuberculosis, and which was treated from outside. So we had really no control or no idea how he had taken the treatment. So then we did a FNAC from the chest wall cover. Am I audible, please?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, and in 2018 April, and it came as AFB positive. Then we did CBNAT as well, and it showed rifampicin sensitivity. That by that time, the daily dots, the fixed dose combinations have already come. So we started with CAT2 daily dots, which was 4 FDC3 pills along with injection streptomycin. We were suspecting clinical failure as well because he was having recurrent tuberculosis. So we did a viral load as well, and it showed viral load is below detectable line. Then he continued with the daily dots from our center, and he completed daily dots by February 2019. By then, we got few tests done for him. That is, we tried to look whether there is anything in the lung also or not, because one X-ray, what we saw, I think I presented that also. There was a bronchosvarscular marginal prominence, and we were suspecting if there is something else. But the sputum AFB came negative. Lymph node aspirate for CBNAT was positive. But then we realized and we came to know that CBNAT can come positive even after completing the ATT. The USG test was also done. I think I've submitted the report as well. It showed hypoechoic collection, intramuscular plane, which they suspected as cold abscess. It was a well-defined SOL on the right lateral chest wall. Right now, the patient is doing fine. He even completed IPT. His further viral load are also showing good results. It's still below detectable line. He is asymptomatic. And now, as per NACO protocol, we have changed his regimen to TLD, to dolutegravir. But the reason, I know this case is a little old case, but I decided to choose this case to present in front of all of you, all esteemed members, because for immunocompromised patients, it is very common to find very atypical presentations of very common infections. And this case, especially when he came to us, not even once we really thought of tuberculosis being to be diagnosed, because it actually looked like a lipoma or something else, absolutely something else. I'm sorry I could not provide any photographs. I did not take any photographs during that time, but I think next time onwards, if I at all find any unusual case, I'll definitely keep some photographs. I thank all the members and Dr. Anuradha especially for allowing me to present this case. I'm sorry for the delay due to the device issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prabha. I would actually congratulate you for showing us such an excellent case and for actually presenting it so well. And before I open it to the house, I have one query. So for regarding the patient, I missed it actually. I missed that detail. So when the patient came to you for ART registration, and when ART was started from him in 2016, that time he already had a history of past TB 9 months ago, right? Then
Yes.
he was diagnosed with cervical lymphadenopathy about 3-4 days after he was started on ART. Is that right?
Yeah, by next month, next visit
month.
or
Next visit he was diagnosed. Okay, and then we have this episode.
complaint.
And then we have this episode.
Yeah.
So in the first past TB, he had taken it from a private practitioner. Cervical lymph node also he took the treatment from a private practitioner, and this time he took daily dots. Am I
Third
right?
time, actually.
Third time.
Second time also when he was diagnosed, and we planned to start him on Cat1. That time he got sick and he couldn't come to the center. So he got admitted to some other place, and there they started AKT4. We even tried to convince him and counseled him with that he should continue with the national program, and he should continue medicines from our place. But he was not convinced enough, and he said that I would like to continue the TB medicines from outside. But the same thing happened that even after taking it for 1 year, again he presented with a very different presentation. We would like to think it's a new infection, but it can be a relapse as well. But rifampicin was luckily sensitive.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Does the house want, it's a recurrent TB at least, if we cannot differentiate between relapse or reinfection, it is, we are usually putting all these cases together in the term of recurrent TB. So before I summarize the case, would somebody want to ask any question from all the attendees? Would any of the participants want to ask any question regarding the case? And I welcome our APD from Andhra Pradesh. Welcome, ma'am. I had the good opportunity of meeting you in the meeting that took place in Vizag. Welcome, madam. So no questions. So I will just go ahead with the summarization. So today, ART Center from West Bengal has brought a very interesting case. Today we are going to discuss something entirely new. It is about a young male PL-HIV who presented to the ART Center in October 2016. His baseline CD4 count was 69. They evaluated the patient. They looked at him for opportunistic infections. They found none. And within about 10 to 12 days, he was started on ART. Very appropriately by the center. But when the patient came on the first visit, next visit after initiation of ART, that time a cervical lymph node was visible. Most likely this cervical lymph node was not there earlier, or it was so small that it was not detectable by the team, by the examining physician. So though it is difficult to say whether it is unmasking or a misdiagnosis, the point remains that in field conditions, this very often happens. A small lymph node might not be picked up. So he comes back with a cervical lymph node TB, he gets sick with TB, he goes to a private practitioner, continues ART with them, takes ATP from somebody outside, keeps taking the ATP for 1 year. And I think by that time, we did not have the IPT initiative in our program in a very robust manner. By that time, though IPT was introduced in 2017, there were a lot of logistic and availability of drug problems. So I think in that confusion, he probably missed out on the IPT during the time that he took the treatment for cervical lymphadenopathy from his private practitioner. So we have somebody who has taken 2 episodes of ATT within 1 year. And then once again, he has good ART adherence. He has more than 95% adherence, but this goes to prove that only ART cannot work. This is a very good case to say that TB will develop even if you take ART. So here is the case of starting IPT in all patients who have been ART for a very long time. This is so beautifully illustrated by this case. Now, once this happened, again, this patient presented with a lump or a swelling on the anterior chest wall. And what Dr. Prapa said is very correct. Swelling on the chest, unless and until you are really attuned to tuberculosis of the thoracic cavity, you would probably not consider TB as the first diagnosis. especially in a person who has taken treatment for 1 year. You would not expect that the patient would again have TB. They thought of other differential diagnoses. They did an ultrasound. The ultrasound basically just showed a cavity with hypoechogenicity. Then they did a FNAC. The FNAC was inconclusive. Then finally they went on to do a CBNAT, and it was actually the CBNAT which showed it was TB, and it was thankfully R sensitive. So with this baseline, this time they started the patient on the daily DOTS regimen, and the patient completed his daily DOTS in April 2019, and he's been doing well. His CD4 at the time of completion of this current episode of TB was very good. It was about 842, and his viral loads were non-detectable. So I think this is an excellent case. And with this background, I would like to request our specialist from thoracic surgery, here it is, Dr. Pallavi, to kindly give a presentation on TB of the anterior chest wall. Any questions before we move on to the presentation? NRI AP, sir, any question? Dr. Dharampal, sir, any question? Yes, sir. Please unmute, sir. Please unmute. Yes, sir. We can't hear you, sir. Sir, can't hear you. Can't hear you, sir. Please unmute again. Oh. Sir, we can't hear you. Dr. Dharampal, we can't hear you, sir. Your microphone is not connected. Please put in the chat box or connect your microphone. So while we wait Dr. Dharampal to give his query in the chat box, can I request Dr. Pallavi to go ahead with the presentation?
I want to comment.
Yes,
A swelling on a chest wall, as in our undergraduate courses, first of all, that is not a sufficient thing. We should be also able to tell, is the swelling present in a subcutaneous plane by inspection? Is it mobile? It is not. Is it fixed to the chest wall? Not fixed to the chest wall? Was it soft, fluctuant, or those things? For those characteristics assessed, because that's the basic in assessment of any swelling anywhere in the body. That is one question I have from the presenter.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Prapa. Dr. Prapa,
Yes.
Ma'am, can you please respond to this query? What was, would you
describe the swelling?
Describe the swelling.
Swelling, its size, fluctuation, chest wall, etc.
The swelling was in the intramuscular plane. The swelling was mobile. It was not fixed, but it was not what I can say, because it at least 5 years back, 4 years, 2 to 3 years, 2018 it happened. So whatever I can remember, that was the consistency of the swelling. It was not like a typical lipoma, but it was soft. It was soft swelling. It was not a hard swelling. There was no adjacent lymph nodes. So we were thinking whether it can be some neoplastic lesions, but there was no other symptoms suggestive of anything else. So actually, the TB test was done maybe out of interest, because we all were discussing with our nodal officers that what can be the possible thing. We even send the patient to surgery. They were also not able to give us a very conclusive result. So we thought it's better to do an FNAC and let it know. I can be frank with you that initially we never thought it to be a TB. It was a soft lesion, but it was not a fluctuant lesion, and it was intramuscular. It was in the intramuscular plane.
But I just brought it out to say that the basic inspection, palpation, etc., that we mentioned for swelling should not be missed. Because we see cold abscesses and chest wall cold abscesses in subcutaneous plane, intramuscular plane, plane below the muscles, stuck to the ribs, etc., sometimes coming as a sinuses or a subdivious connection inside the pleural cavity also. So accordingly, the clinical behavior varies. And so, unless you have notes from that 3 years ago, you cannot be sure about those findings. But sometimes they do enlighten us to the possibility of this being a cold abscess rather than being a lipoma or something else.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes. That's an excellent point, sir. Spoken like a true expert. And would anybody want to add something to that? Dr. Prab, anybody wants to add something to that? So can I request Dr. Pallavi to go ahead with the talk? Can somebody please share the screen?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about two differentials which were possible in this patient. One would be a tuberculous cold abscess, and the other would be an empyema necessitans. Both might present with a swelling on the chest wall, and I thought that it is important to understand these two pathologies, looking for answers. Next. Tuberculosis of the chest wall is an extrapulmonary lesion which occurs in only 1 to 5% of all TB patients that we sense. Hence, I agree with Dr. Prappa that it is a rare diagnosis to think of. The differentials, as you also thought of, would include a chest wall tumor, a pyogenic wall infection, or actinomycetes. The chief differential from a pyogenic wall infection would be that in a pyogenic infection, the patient will have signs of inflammation. There will be redness over the swelling. It will be very painful to touch. In a cold abscess, generally, we don't have these signs. When we look at actinomycetes as a differential, what happens is there are sinuses in addition to the swelling, which I believe may not have been present in your patient. And chest wall tumors would be harder in consistency. So these are the three main differentials. Now let us look at the cold abscess. This is generally a sign of severe or disseminated TB. And it is generally secondary to pleuropulmonary involvement. And that is why it is important for us to understand the difference between a cold abscess and empyema necessitans. It can involve the ribs, the sternum, the clavicle, the vertebrae, and rarely also the intercostal spaces. Next. The mechanism of cold abscess is important to understand. It is not just always subcutaneous tracking of pleural involvement. Most commonly what happens is there is first pleural thickening. Then the visceral pleura gets adherent to the parietal pleura. This leg gets the lymphatics get involved with inflammation, and the lymphatic network then spreads to the chest wall. And from this lymphatic network, the Mycobacterium tuberculosis flows into the lymphatic channels and causes caseous necrosis and fistula in the new lymphatic channels in the subcutaneous tissue. And this then leads to regional lymph node involvement and ultimately a soft tissue swelling. It can also be a chest wall abscess developing secondary to a localized empyema from tuberculous pleuritis. When it is associated with empyema in the chest and an abscess on the chest wall, then it is called empyema necessitans. But however, if the patient has only a residual pleural thickening and a small abscess in the chest wall alone, then it is called a cold abscess occurring by this mechanism. Also, it can be because of M. tuberculosis disseminating into the soft tissue of the chest wall, the Mycobacterium, and rarely it can also occur because of hematogenous spread. Next, please. When we look at the clinical presentation, most often it is a painless cystic mass. Very important to understand, there are no overlying inflammatory signs on the skin. Skin fistulization is rare. However, it is observed when we see that the patient has undergone multiple times needle punctures. Then there is a very high likelihood of skin fistulization, and that is also possible when in a patient of empyema, we are doing a thoracocentesis. And then there is tracking, and that fistulization can also lead to a skin fistulization. Another very important thing to note is that traditional teaching was that even if we suspect a tubercular cold abscess, we have to do a non-dependent drainage because of this risk only, that there will be a skin fistulization and the fistula will not heal. It can be isolated or associated with pulmonary or mediastinal lymph nodes or a multifocal localization as part of a spectrum of disseminated TB. The pathognomic signs which can help us think of TB in such patient would be a history of tuberculosis, parietal swelling which gradually increases in volume without associated major inflammatory signs. So classically the patient might give history, although in HIV in this patient it did not, but might give a history of evening rise of temperature which is happening for 2 to 3 weeks, and that might be a diagnostic clincher for us. Next, please. When we look at what should be done, I mean, any patient when we suspect a cold abscess or we suspect a chest wall swelling, the first thing that should come to mind is to do an X-ray of the thorax. Now we can have two things. We can either have a normal chest X-ray, or it can be that there is an underlying pleural effusion, pleural thickening, or a parietal opacity. The next order of investigation would be an ultrasonography, which will tell us the right plane, whether it is intramuscular, subcutaneous, or involving the rib or not. The ideal investigation in any patient who has a cold abscess would be a thoracic CT. This will not just tell us about the presence of an abscess, it will also tell us about the underlying empyema, if any. It will also tell us about the condition of the ribs, whether any of the rib is eroded, whether there are any signs of tuberculosis in the ribs. We often see patients, because we are a referral center, we have patients coming up with pre-sternal swelling. Even in that, many a times we get the patient is referred to us without being adequately evaluated. Even in those patients, a CT thorax is very important, because if there is underlying sternal bone erosion, then we need to see the depth of erosion, and so that we can plan our management accordingly. So very rarely, when there is a very high chance of possibility of malignancy, a scintigraphy may also help us localize the lesion, and that is just for completion and not a routinely done test. Next, please. So for diagnosis, it is very straightforward. We have to take a sample. Ideal is ultrasound guided needle aspiration, although you can consider a surgical removal if it is a very small cold abscess. So what are the diagnostic clinchers? We can either have a detection of the bacillus in the puncture fluid. CB-NAT will also show it, an MGIT will show it, and just a plain smear can also show that. In cases of diagnostic dilemma, or if it is a very solidified kind of a swelling, the fluid may not be present, and then we need a biopsy of the fragments. We can just take a fragment, and it is important to note that when we are taking a surgical biopsy of the specimen, it has to be from the wall of the abscess. We should not send the necrotic material which is in the middle or the fluid alone for testing. We have to take an adequate sample from the wall of the abscess, because that is where the aerobic bacillus will be growing based on the diagnosis of TB as we know. Then histology can show a granuloma or a caseous necrosis. If we are sending the entire specimen for histopathology, it is ideal to just cut a small bit of tissue and send it for MGIT as well. Next, please. So treatment, medical management alone for 6 months can cure a lot of patients. But yes, we must be aware that this is associated with a high recurrence rate. And hence, every patient of a cold abscess should get a thoracic surgical evaluation. It is recommended that we should do a combined surgical treatment with anti-tubercular therapy, because more often than not, there will be some underlying bone disease which might not be present at this juncture at the initial completion of ATT, but the patient will later on present with a sinus, and the more delay that we do after completion of treatment, the more complicated the surgery becomes. The goals of surgery would be to obliterate the cavity, that is flattening the cold abscess, removal of all the infected necrotic tissue, and also removal of the underlying rib or cartilage which is affected. It is very easy to a lot of times what we get is we get those patients referred to us after an incomplete job. We must always remember that doing it completely at the first go gives the best patient results and best outcomes. Sometimes what happens is that there is some erosion on the rib, but some general surgeon may not feel confident enough in removing a segment of the rib. It is better to remove a segment of the rib than to leave the disease behind. The complications of the surgery would be bleeding, subcutaneous emphysema, pleural effusion or empyema, and possibility of activation of pulmonary tuberculosis. But all these complications, we must know, are rare. It is surgery for cold abscess gets complicated in less than 0.5% of the patients. Next. Coming on to the other differential that one must always think of, it is empyema necessitans. Next. This is an extension of an empyema out of the pleural space into the neighboring chest wall and surrounding soft tissues. Tuberculosis is more likely etiology if a patient presents with empyema necessitans than a pyogenic abscess. Pyogenic abscesses, the patient will be more septic, and developing an empyema necessitans, that is a cold abscess with an empyema inside, is very rare in non-tubercular etiologies. The mechanism, as we discussed with the cold abscess, is retention of infected pleural fluid leading to fistula formation with the pleural cavity into the chest wall, causing a prominent swelling. Presentation is pain, swelling, lymphadenopathy, anterolateral chest wall, often without fever. If the patient has significant empyema, which is also very rare, we must always know that empyema necessitans, when the fluid tracks into the chest wall, there is a very limited presentation as shortness of breath, because the fluid has gotten a low pressure outlet, and hence breathing is not that difficult. It generally develops over 4 to 8 weeks, and the most common site is the anterior chest wall, especially the mid-clavicular and between the mid-clavicular and the anterior axillary line, between the second to sixth intercostal spaces. Incidentally, this is the site where most of the intercostal drains are also placed. Next. So again, any patient where we are seeing a chest X-ray suggestive of an empyema and presenting with a chest wall swelling, we must do a CCT thorax. It will not just show the empyema, but also it will show the entire tract of dissemination from the pleural cavity into the chest wall. It will also show us the adjacent rib destruction, which will help us plan what to do next. Treatment-wise, first thing would be to do a cytology and microbiology of the material aspirated from the subcutaneous lesion. It is very important here to understand that more often than not, these patients have to be managed on the inside before tackling the cold abscess. It is very, it's tempting for a lot of general surgeons to put in a incision on the cold abscess, thinking that the pleural space will also drain adequately by this. But we discourage this policy, because what happens is that if we drain the superficial content and do not take care of the fistulization or the tract which is from the pleural space to the chest wall, patient will keep having recurrent symptoms. Next. So looking at management, again, the management for empyema necessitans is a combined medical and surgical management. Patient must receive ATT for 6 months, and initially it will depend on the presentation. The first line of treatment is not drainage of the cold abscess. The first line of treatment is an intercostal drainage of the pus which is on the inside. Once we give a wide bore drainage to the pus which is inside the chest cavity, there is a chance that with medical therapy alone, this tract will close spontaneously. If the patient improves, we remove the drain. However, if the patient does not improve, we look for what is coming in the ICD. If there is a significant air leak and the patient is moribund, not fit for any major surgery, then we can offer him a minor surgery, which is a pleurocutaneous window. And we've seen at our center that offering this procedure improves the quality of life of our patients drastically. And patients who come bedridden, dependent on oxygen, walk back home and come back at 3 months with near complete lung expansions. And if the patient is completely fit and there is no air leak in the chest drain, then early decortication is the treatment of choice. Empyema necessitans is one of the rare conditions wherein in tubercular empyema necessitans, we offer surgery at 4 weeks of ATT. Next. So a word on decortication, what we do, this is just for completion. I'm sure we don't have too many surgeons in the audience. So what we do is we do a drainage of the purulent material. We completely remove the visceral as well as the parietal pleura, which is causing restriction of the lung. We ensure complete lung expansion as well as diaphragmatic excursion. So we have to make the fissures, we have to completely mobilize the lung anteriorly up to the phrenic nerve, posteriorly up to the vertebral column, superiorly up to the arch of aorta on the left and azygous vein on the right, and inferiorly completely mobilize the inferior pulmonary ligament. So 2 or 3 ribs overlying the empyema cavity in the axillary region and adequate parietal pleurectomy to free the intercostal spaces. Another procedure which is needed in the moribund patients or those who are unfit for any further therapy is a pleurocutaneous window, wherein we resect 3 centimeter long segments of 2 ribs and create a subcutaneous space for the pus to drain adequately. A lot of, with good drainage being established, the bronchopleural fistula start healing and the empyema cavity starts healing from within. Very soon, over 6 months to 1 year, most of these patients will have a very good lung expansion and the pleurocutaneous window gradually contracts and heals by secondary intention from the inside. Next. So this is an image of what the pus looks like when we are doing a decortication for empyema. Next. This is how we do it. We can see that in the CT image also there is a cavity on the anterior aspect as well as posteriorly, which is surrounded by a thick pleura. We can see both the visceral and the pleural, parietal pleural thickening. And these are the intraoperative images of how we remove the pleura completely. Next. And this is an image of how a pleurocutaneous window looks like. It is a very small skin space in the chest, which we create by resecting very small segments of two ribs. And a lot of our patients get better with this alone. Thank you.
So that was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Dr. Pallavi. Beautifully explained. I would now like to ask Sir to add to what she says.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pasna. Very interesting case, Dr. Papa. Congratulations for the case and the point that it is going to highlight. From my viewpoint as a thoracic surgeon with some experience, as if we go from the beginning, it is in the context of a patient who is a known case of HIV on ART therapy. So one of the things that we have to note is that this patient has taken ATT twice in an unsupervised manner, at least the manner which we do not know.
Yes.
Probably if the first two episodes that ever occurred, if the treatment was supervised in the proper ATT, this thing might not have happened. Number two, with HIV, unusual presentations of tuberculosis are quite common. Even without HIV, there are myriad presentations of tuberculosis are there, but with HIV, unusual presentations do take place. Whether they are cervical nodes, whether involvement of the lung itself, whether pleural infections, whether chest wall infections, they present in unusual manners. Number three, as I already mentioned, that when a swelling comes, we have to inspect it completely, and also because in the differential diagnosis of any chest wall swelling, an aneurysm always remains a possibility. Whether swelling is pulsatile or not, and nobody should rush with a needle or a scalpel immediately to a chest wall swelling. So that thing should be also evaluated. That is something very basic. And now another point I wish to make is the presence of HIV positivity does not contraindicate any amount of surgical intervention if it is indicated, whether it is simple needle drainage, total drainage, incisional drainage, tube thoracostomy, or the other procedures which my colleague Dr. Pallavi described. So none of these procedures are contraindicated. If the indication to do these procedures is very much present, but the patient should not have a CD count below 200, of course, and patient should be on ART supervised ATT for a sufficiently long time. You will not rush in these cases, even if an abscess is present, until it is about to burst. You should not rush in with surgery. Take adequate drugs, cover of anti-tubercular drugs, and then only give the incision. And number five, as Dr. Pallavi has mentioned, the job should be done completely. More often than not, we get referrals and the jobs have been done, but not done completely. And very important that pleural drainage takes precedence over the drainage of chest wall in a case of empyema necessitans. Every case is a possible case of empyema necessitans. This case was not a case of empyema necessitans, but that possibility always exists. Another point I wish to mention is that we had a case of chest wall abscess, who chest wall had eroded into the internal mammary artery, and patient had presented with shock. We had to do an urgent thoracotomy, take control of the internal mammary artery, and then we do nothing on the chest wall itself. Slowly everything healed with anti-tubercular treatment. Otherwise the patient, and we have published that paper also. So myriad presentations are possible, but in the overall context of HIV with tuberculosis, I say that no surgical intervention is contraindicated. It should be done as and when needed after adequate precautions. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Can I request anyone from the audience to please, Dr. Prapa, are your issues settled? In an unfortunate case that this person relapses because we cannot do any surgical measure in this, I think you know that this time involvement of a thoracic surgical team would be very, very essential. Let's hope the IPT works. We really pray to God, but in case something happens, I think we should know that a thoracic surgical involvement is essential. And could you please tell us if your doubts have been cleared, or would you like to ask our esteemed faculty anything else?
No, definitely. Actually, I was talking to Dr. Anuradha regarding this, that this case is a little old case, but still I was very surprised to see this case, and I would like to present this case, though the patient is doing quite fine now. But I think today's discussion has taught me more than what I expected, because regarding this cardiothoracic intervention in case of any empyema, or even having this kind of differential diagnosis, referring them for the further treatment possibilities, I think I wouldn't have known if I wouldn't have joined today's session. So I'm extremely grateful to all the eminent doctors and Inishit, definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for such kind words. Dr. Joshal, would you like to ask something? Dr. Joshal from NITRD, Dr. Anushri, आप लोग कुछ पूछना चाहेंगे? सब clear है?
I may add two more things that as Dr. Pallavi has mentioned, early CT scan helps a lot. Nowadays, we should be slightly more liberal with the use of CT scans. Because even if a cold abscess appears like a cold abscess, a CT scan will very well delineate if there is a pleural involvement or not. So CT scan should also be more liberally used in cases of swellings, and that will also help you to differentiate between a vascular lesion or an abscess and the plane at which it exists. Is it in the subcutaneous plane, intramuscular plane, or the plane between the muscles and the rib? And another thing Dr. Pallavi mentioned about PC window, pluricutaneous window, that is actually a modified Ehlers flap. If you see in the literature, what was the Ehlers flap? If you modify into a small resection of two ribs, the stitching of pleura and skin. So sick cases of empyema, whether with HIV or without HIV, if you are not able to do a complete decortication, we offer this procedure in several cases, and we see excellent results. This was a procedure described in 1938 or 39 by Ehlers. Later on, because of good anti-tubercular chemotherapy, it did not remain in vogue much, and many surgeons are not familiar with this procedure. But it still retains its usefulness in our context and situation, and it can be done, and somehow it leads to dramatic improvement in cases who are sick with empyema, and nothing else can be done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Rajesh Gopal from Gujarat, sir, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much for the excellent presentations. And I'm personally enlightened about so many things, especially the surgical management aspect of it. Thank you. Very nicely conducted. All the best.
And sir, we have APT Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Uma Shankar. Would you like to say something? Dr. Uma?
Very nice presentation, ma'am. And I am a pathologist, and I have seen many swellings in the rare places. I have seen one swelling on the foot. Astonishingly, when we were doing an FNSC, it turned out to be tuberculosis, and we were very surprised. And this presentation is very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'll just summarize in precisely 3 minutes. So as Dr. Pallavi told us, an anterior chest wall abscess is a TB of the chest wall. It is very rare because it is only 1% of musculoskeletal TB, and we know musculoskeletal TB itself is not very common. And it usually means that it is a dissemination. The most common site from which they disseminate is the ribs. In a cold abscess, please remember it will be a painless cystic mass, and there will not be signs and symptoms of inflammation. The pathognomic thing for this will be that there is a history of TB, and with a gradually increasing size of the swelling, which shows no signs and symptoms of inflammation. So this is a learning point, because most of us are medical officers, and so we need to know small take-home messages. So one is, please be vigilant that something anywhere on the chest wall, on the back, on the neck can be a cold abscess, tracking from some other primary site of TB like the rib or the spine or sometimes the scapula. So please remember that it would be a swelling which would be fluctuant but would not be showing any signs and symptoms of inflammation. The differential diagnosis for this would be a chest wall tumor, a pyogenic infection, and also probably an actinomyces. So the most important investigation after first would be an X-ray, then you could have a ultrasound as was done in this case, and then you could probably do an ultrasound guided biopsy or a FNAC. And FNAC might necessarily not be ultrasound guided, but if you want to do a biopsy, it should be preferable to do it ultrasound guided. As Sir said, we have to check whether it is a pulsatile swelling or not. A pulsatile swelling, an aneurysm can present as a pulsatile swelling in the chest wall. Please remember that in pulsatile swellings, please don't put needles or biopsy needles. Please remember that, don't start biopsying them. Once you get a sample, you send it for histopathology or cytology as your sample may be, plus CBNAT, plus a liquid culture of TB, and also a microscopy side by side, which usually gives a fast result, as was done in this case. Then once you have your diagnosis and you have realized that it's a cold abscess and it is not a the other thing was empyema necessitans. The difference between the two being that empyema necessitans is primarily an empyema of the pleura which has tracked to the anterior wall, and a cold abscess is a TB infection of any one of the muscles or bones which has tracked to the anterior chest wall. Essentially, the presentation is almost the same. No signs and symptoms of inflammation unless there's a secondary infection, then that is a totally different thing. And the management is same. With ATT, you have to have some sort of surgical management, a complete surgical debridement, a decortication, or a PC window, depending upon the air leak and the status of the health status of the patient. I think this is the story in a nutshell. And if there is a take-home message, please remember an anterior chest wall swelling. First, see if it is pulsatile. If it is not pulsatile, FNAC it, biopsy it, get an ultrasound, get a CT, get an X-ray to see if there's underlying empyema. If things are very clear, fine. And you have to refer it to a thoracic surgeon. A thoracic surgeon would like to get a CT also done. Even if it is clear in the X-ray, they would like to get a CT done to see the bone involvement, to see the extent of the cavity, to see if there are any further things that need to be cleaned up during surgery. Then start the patient on ATT and refer him for surgery. Once your PLHIV has been stable on ATT and ART, there is no contraindication for thoracic surgery. So this is the summary of today's presentation, and I would request Dr. Pallavi and sorry if there's anything more you would like to say.
I think most of the points have been covered, so summarized so well by Dr. Upasana. And as I mentioned about this vascular swelling, it's very rarely mentioned, but you see, even in the TB hospital that we were working, a carotid body tumor was referred to us for FNAC. Only the clinical inspection and examination should never be given a miss. Sometimes you can commit and end up into different problems. So that is why that thing should be always kept in mind. Though it's very rare, so it normally does not happen, and cold abscesses are quite common in Indian situation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pallavi, you would like to say something?
I would just say that this was an interesting case to make it important that for all of us involved in management of patients, it is always a multidisciplinary team decision making, and we should keep consulting between our colleagues, because surgical plus medical is the way forward, not just for cancers but also for all infectious diseases.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And may I request everybody to put up the post-test? And while everybody is attempting the post-test, I would like to give my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Diwan, our director, for coming to this session, gracing this session, and for giving us so much of wisdom of all the cases that he saw over the years. And you can actually make out an expert when they start speaking with all that accumulated knowledge that they have from the years. And I thank you so much, Dr. Pallavi. It was one of the most clearest presentations I have heard on e-Nishchit in the past 3 years. Very clear, to the point, and totally understandable by the cadre of people who are there in the ART centers. Thank you so much. And Dr. Ananya, once we pull down the post-test, can you please answer the questions? Post-test, Kitika? 2 seconds more.
2 seconds more.
Okay. And anybody wants to say something, they're still welcome to send in chats or send in queries. We will ask Dr. Diwan and Dr. Pallavi to answer them. Even if you have some doubts later on, you can send us emails. We will get the answers from our experts and email them to you. So Dr. Ananya, can I request you to give answers for the mask?
So the
Please launch feedback. Yeah.
So to go the post-test question, we had 2 questions today. The first one was 15-year-old young lady. As you can see, she was on antitubercular therapy for past 3 months based on sputum culture, and her initial presentation was covered with expectoration. Later, she developed empyema thoracic, for which she was managed with thoracocentesis. She then presented with a non-inflamed swelling at the thymus site of thoracocentesis, which is compressible and non-pulsatile. So the possible diagnosis, the answer was tubercular cold abscess. So I see there was a lot of conversion in the post test. A lot of correct answers were given. And the second
is
Yes.
second 30-year-old gentleman with swelling in the right lateral chest wall. There is some pain, but no tenderness or redness on clinical examination. He gives history of evening rise of temperature for the past 1 month, which is false. So in that case, CECT thoracic useful to look for pleural involvement, which we just got enlightened with that yes, it is important. Decortication as soon as possible in case CECT suggested of empyema necessitates. This is also true. Excision of abscess and anti-tubercular therapy, CECT is normal. So none of the above.
The answer is 2.
The answer was 2. So this question is 2.
You can explain.
For this, the second question, I would like to explain the reason why this the second option is not good is because if you have a patient of empyema necessitans, the first order of management is to start anti-tubercular therapy and drain the pus. If after that the patient is not getting resolved, then at 4 weeks is the time when you think of going for surgery. Decortication is never an emergency surgery unless it is for pyogenic reasons.
So thank you. And is there anything else? Ananya, want to say something?
Yeah, just one thing I want to say, this surgery because I have heard sir before also, and every time sir talks to us about surgery and HIV, it is not only enlightening, it's very motivating because this is still a very untapped area. And I believe there's always a first. Now that we have the privilege of hearing him, and you people should take it, all of us should take it as a message that unless we don't, the eyes don't see what mind doesn't know. So we know that there is an option of life. There should not be any mental block against surgery for HIV patient, and we should be more receptive towards it, like sir said, and we should just open that ourselves to that avenue also. That's what I believe.
Just to add to what Dr. Ananya said, sir has operated on several of our patients from the ART center. Not 1 or 2, but several patients. And it is always so heartening and so encouraging that he is not one of those surgeons that we hear of who turn away HIV positive patients because of their status. So I think with a round of applause for our thoracic surgical team. So thank you so much for a patient hearing. And with that, I would like to close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.